Monday mornings used to mean something in our house, fresh groceries in the fridge, a calendar wiped clean, and Marissa humming under her breath as she made eggs. But that morning was different. She didn't hum. She barely looked at me. I was at the table with my second cup of coffee, reading the Darlington Tribune, still in my work shirt, sleeves rolled. The air smelled like cinnamon toast and too much hairspray. "Gavin," she said, quiet but intentional. "Can you put the paper down? I need to talk to you." Something in her voice set the tone, too calm, too rehearsed. I set the paper aside slowly. "I'm leaving you," she said. "I want a divorce." I blinked once. No sigh, no question, just a pause. Then I picked the paper back up and flipped to the sports section. "That all?" I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Her chair screeched against the tile. "I'm serious. I heard you. You're not even going to ask why?" "Nope. You're unbelievable. You know that?" I folded the paper, set it down again, and looked at her. "You checked out a long time ago, Marissa. You're just now admitting it." "Frankly, I'm relieved." She opened her mouth, then closed it. I stood up. "I've got a full day ahead. If you're leaving, get your things out by tonight." "I'm not going anywhere." "Then we've got a problem." I walked down the hall to the study, what used to be my dad's den before he passed. Still smelled like old books and machine oil. I opened the drawer where I kept site reports and bid notes and pulled out one of my yellow notebooks. Then I grabbed an envelope, paused, and smiled at a lottery ticket I'd tucked in there the night before. It had been a joke, a what-if. Now it had purpose. Back at the kitchen table, she was still standing. I sat, opened the notebook, and wrote with slow, deliberate strokes. "Dorian, thanks. And thank God. She's finally leaving me." I folded the ticket inside and added, "Maybe if you hit it big, she'll stay loyal. Not likely, but good luck. A very grateful Gavin." I sealed the envelope and held it out. "When you see him, give him this." She didn't take it. Just stared like I'd grown a second head. "You think I didn't know?" I said. "You think you're that good a liar?" She reached for the envelope. I pulled it back. "Actually, never mind. I'll mail it. I don't trust you not to open it and toss it." "You're pathetic," she hissed. "No," I said, standing. "I'm prepared." I rinsed out my mug, filled my thermos, and grabbed my keys. As I passed her in the kitchen, she moved like she might say something, an apology, maybe, or another shot. But she didn't. At the bank, I closed every account with her name on it. Our joint checking, savings, even the safe deposit box we'd barely used. When the teller asked if I wanted a cashier's check or cash, I asked for both. Redundancy's a habit in my business. I drove to First Foundry Bank across town, opened accounts in my name only, and deposited most of it. The rest stayed in the glove box, just in case. From the job site, I called every credit card company we shared. Canceled them. Replaced mine. Let hers die. Then I dug into my project schedule, the one thing that still made sense. I stayed at the office past 7. My mind had already jumped a dozen steps ahead, legal, logistical, financial. Emotionally, I felt nothing. Like I'd been living on the edge of this conversation for too long, and now that it had finally happened, the numbness was confirmation. Around 7:30, I messaged Jules and asked if she'd had dinner. She replied, "Not yet." "Want to?" I picked her up from the office, and we grabbed a booth at O'Malley's, 2 blocks from our supply warehouse. She didn't ask about Marissa. She just talked contractor delays, the new union reps, her nephew's Little League game. It felt normal. Easy. Midway through her salad, I said, "I think I'm back on the market." She froze, fork halfway up. "What happened?" She said she wants a divorce. She didn't say I'm sorry. She didn't offer pity. She just looked me in the eye. "Good," she said. That made me laugh, first time that day. "You don't look surprised." "I'm not. I've seen how you come in every Monday morning. Like you've been holding your breath all weekend." I nodded, thoughtful. "You free this weekend?" she asked. "Depends what you've got in mind." She leaned forward slightly. "I'm saying I've waited a long time for you to be single. I'd like a shot." I stared at her, not quite processing. "You're serious?" "As a heart attack." I looked down at my glass. "Jules, I don't even know what my status is yet." "You will," she said. "Soon. But I wanted to be clear, just in case you thought you were starting over from scratch." I sat back, exhaled slowly, and took the first real sip of my drink. It tasted like permission. I barely slept that night. Not out of grief or doubt, but because my mind wouldn't stop calculating. I lay in the spare bedroom, the one I'd converted into a drafting nook back when I still believed marriage was a shared project, and listened to Marissa pace overhead, probably going room to room, testing how much of her life she could carry in a suitcase. She was still there the next morning, still acting like it was her house. I let her have the silence. I left without a word. At 7:12 a.m., I pulled into the gravel lot behind Benny's Diner. The kind of place with cracked leather booths, sun-faded photos of regulars pinned to a corkboard, and a waitress named Shirley who called every man under 60 darlin'. I took my usual seat by the window and watched the morning crowd shuffle in: contractors, surveyors, the two roofing guys who always smelled like burnt tar and Camel Reds. While I waited for my eggs, I made a list. Not a long one. Just names. People who needed to hear the truth from me, not from whatever story Marissa would eventually spin. By 8:45, I was back at the office. Jules met me at the door, coffee in hand. "Morning," she said, casual but alert. I nodded. "Appreciate the coffee." She followed me to my office. When I sat down, she leaned against the doorway and studied my face for a beat. "You think she's going to file?" I looked up from my screen. "No idea. I don't even know if she can afford to. She's got him, though, right? Dorian? He'll cover it." "Maybe," I said. "Maybe not." Jules crossed her arms. "What if she doesn't? What if she sits on her hands for 6 months, waits you out? Then I'll wait." She stepped in, closed the door behind her. "No, Gavin. That's not the move." I watched her shoulders square, tone steady. She wasn't trying to be emotional. She was being tactical. "You wait," she said, "and she's in control. You wait, and she gets to paint the picture. You think she'll tell the truth? You think she'll say, 'He was loyal. I wasn't. He found out. I didn't care'? No. She'll say you were cold, distant, that you made her feel invisible. She might. She will. And if she files first, you're playing catch-up. What if she claims mental cruelty? What if she gets a judge to order you out of the house? You're not protected." I took a breath. "You're right. And while she's slow-rolling you, we can't even see each other. Technically, you'd still be married." She was right again. If I waited, I handed Marissa all the leverage, financial, legal, reputational. And worst of all, she'd own the narrative. I picked up my phone and called Alec. He answered on the second ring. "You okay? I need your help." Alec and I had been friends since 3rd grade. He was one of the sharpest minds in Harrington's legal circle, a family law specialist who rarely advertised but was always busy. We'd shared a lot: camping trips, heartbreaks, even a garage band back in high school. He also happened to be married to Marissa's old college roommate, so I knew this wasn't going to be simple. After I told him everything, he let out a long exhale. "I'm sorry, man. I always liked her." "I know. So did I." He was quiet for a beat. Then, "Come to the office at lunch. I'll have the paperwork ready." "One more thing," I said. "I want a restraining order." Alec paused. "What happened?" "She said if I made it difficult, Dorian would straighten me out. I want that on record." He sighed. "Bullshit threat. But I get it. Temporary orders are easy to secure. We'll have a hearing in 10 days to make it permanent. But it'll buy you time. That's all I need." At noon, I walked into Alec's office. It smelled like old books and eucalyptus. He handed me a folder full of prep documents and motion forms. Divorce petition. Emergency protective order. Affidavit of financial condition. He didn't waste time. "Sign these. Then we eat." I signed every page. He glanced up. "Still want her served at work?" "Absolutely. Thursday. Mid-morning." He raised an eyebrow. "You want to humiliate her?" I shrugged. "No. I want her out of the house, and I want the locks changed before she tries to twist it." We ate lunch at a quiet bistro on Main. Nothing fancy: burgers, black coffee, conversation that stayed mostly around sports and mutual friends. He didn't press, didn't judge. Just treated me like a man cleaning up a mess he didn't make. By 1:30, I was back at the office. I called in a favor with Miko, the locksmith we used for our commercial properties, and booked him for Friday morning. I offered him double to make it fast. Then I sat at my desk and waited for 5 o'clock to roll around. When I pulled into the driveway, Marissa's car was parked in the same spot. The front porch light was on, even though it was still light out. Inside, I could hear the low murmur of the TV. She was sitting at the kitchen table again, sorting papers into stacks. I walked past her without a word, pulled a beer from the fridge, and leaned against the counter. "I told you I wasn't leaving," she said. "This is my house. It's mine too." I took a sip. "Not for long." She stood. "We need to talk about how this ends." "It ends when you find somewhere else to stay. You're not being fair." I set the bottle down. Fair, I said, walking back toward the table. You slept with someone else. Lied about it for a year and a half. Then told me over coffee like it was a dentist appointment. Now you want fair. I didn't come here to fight. You came here to leave. So leave. She looked tired. Or maybe just cornered. I can't afford a lawyer, she said. Then I guess you'll have to ask your boyfriend for help. She didn't respond. I finished my beer, tossed the bottle in the recycling bin, and headed upstairs to what used to be our bedroom. I locked the door behind me and collapsed onto the bed fully clothed. The wheels were already in motion. The court would process the filing first thing in the morning. Dorian wouldn't see it coming. Neither would she. And the best part? I hadn't even raised my voice. I woke up before sunrise. The kind of wake up that doesn't come from an alarm, but from the weight in your chest that tells you it's time to stop pretending you're asleep. Marissa was still in the house. I could hear the creak of the floorboards near the hallway bathroom. The way she still shuffled her feet on the tile. She hadn't moved into one of the spare rooms like I told her to. Probably thought I was bluffing. Downstairs, I brewed a pot of coffee and stared at the wall above the sink. It was bare. Last week, it had a hand-painted sign that read "Home is wherever I'm with you." Marissa had bought it during our 5th anniversary trip to Asheville. It was gone now. Petty? Maybe. But it meant she was starting to divide the spoils. In her mind, it had already begun. I left before she came down, drove to Pine House Cafe, and took a corner seat near the back where I could watch the front door without being seen. That's an old habit. Comes from working too many site jobs in rough neighborhoods. Jules called it contractor paranoia. I called it survival. Nina, one of the servers, came over. She'd been there for years, sharp, sweet, never nosy. "No Marissa this morning?" she asked. "No," I said. "Not anymore." She tilted her head. "I see." She slid the check across the table a half hour later. Her handwriting on the back wasn't the cafe's number. "My number," she said, quietly. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. Just nodded. 2 women, 2 days. It should have felt flattering. It didn't. It felt like a trick mirror. I could see the outline of something familiar, but not the real thing. Back home, Marissa's car was gone. I moved fast. I pulled out every duffel, box, and tote I could find and started packing her belongings: clothes, shoes, makeup, framed pictures, keepsakes she hadn't looked at in years but would probably claim were sentimental. I loaded them into the garage and left the door wide open. Then I grabbed a thick Sharpie and made a sign out of foam board. "Marissa, all your things are in the garage. Do not enter the house." At 10:15, Alec called. "She's been served." "Where?" "Her office. Front desk. Witnessed by 2 coworkers." "Perfect," I said. "Thanks." I called Miko. He arrived 20 minutes later with his van and his quiet, efficient energy. In less than an hour, every lock was changed: deadbolt, back door, side gate. He even reprogrammed the garage opener to a new code. At 11:45, I heard the sound of tires skidding on the driveway. Marissa's car. She stormed out, saw the sign, and froze. I watched from the upstairs window, just out of sight. She tried her keys, first the front, then the back. Nothing worked. She rang the bell twice, then 3 more times. I didn't move. Eventually, she went into the garage and started rooting through the boxes. Took 2 bags and left. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. "You're AF asterisk 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 ing asshole," she said. "You really had to embarrass me in front of my colleagues?" I was calm. "Better than letting you humiliate me in front of mine." "This restraining order? Seriously? Dorian's not going to hurt you." I wasn't sure. So I decided not to take chances. "I need to get inside. You can't just lock me out of my own house. Everything of yours is in the garage. If there's something missing, make a list. I'll bring it out. Otherwise, don't come in. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Gavin." "I'm doing exactly what I need to do to keep my sanity." She was quiet. Then, "So that's it? You're just throwing me away?" I almost laughed. "No, Marissa. I threw you away the day I found out. This is just me putting the trash on the curb." I hung up. Then I sat down and started making my calls. Friends. Mutuals. Her parents. Everyone who needed to know the truth, my version, not hers. I didn't embellish. I didn't smear. I told them plainly what had happened. She cheated, I found out, and now she was gone. Her father was in denial. Her mother cried. I kept my tone even. Respectful, but firm. After lunch, the guys from Aries Security showed up. A friend had tipped me off that Marissa had a history of ignoring court orders, Something about a previous lease she refused to vacate. I wasn't taking chances. They set up cameras at every entrance. Window sensors. A phone app for real-time alerts. Jules stopped by my office around 4. Everything go okay? She got served. Locks changed. She tried to get in, but I didn't open the door. She nodded, then smiled. So, we still on for the weekend? Yeah, I said. We are. That night, the silence in the house felt different. It wasn't tense anymore. Just empty. I made a frozen dinner, cleaned the kitchen, and sat on the couch flipping through old project folders I hadn't touched in months. At 10:32 p.m., my phone buzzed. Garage door alert. I opened the camera feed. Marissa. She'd used her car's remote, probably hadn't figured out the code was changed yet. She was dragging a few more boxes to her trunk. Then she paused. She looked up at the door that led into the laundry room. Tried the handle. Still locked. She walked back to her car. Then, moments later, she reappeared with a crowbar. I couldn't believe it. She forced the door open, tripped the sensor, walked into my kitchen like she still belonged there. What followed was a tantrum disguised as a burglary. She smashed 2 dinner plates, knocked over a lamp, poured orange juice into the silverware drawer. Then she walked up the stairs, entered the master bedroom, flung open the closet, and pulled every piece of clothing I owned onto the floor. And then, because her cruelty always had a flair for humiliation, she squatted and urinated on the pile. It was all on camera. I called Alec immediately. Jesus Christ, he muttered. All right, I'll call the cops. The officers showed up half an hour later. Took photos. Collected the footage. I let them in through the back and kept my distance. They were polite. Professional. But I could tell they were disgusted. We'll be filing charges for criminal trespass and destruction of property, one said. You'll get a court date within a few days. The next morning, she was arrested at her office. Photographed. Fingerprinted. Hauled in front of a judge who set a hearing for the restraining order and released her on her own recognizance. That night, Jules and I went to dinner. We laughed. Ate well. Danced a little. For the first time in over a year, I felt light. Not happy. Not healed. But light. Monday morning came with overcast skies and the faint smell of bleach still lingering in the master bedroom. I'd hired the most expensive cleaning service in the county, white glove interiors, not because I needed pristine results, but because I wanted the invoice. I wanted the judge to see the number and raise an eyebrow. Petty? Maybe. Strategic? Absolutely. The hearing was at 9 a.m. sharp. I wore a navy suit I hadn't used since my cousin's funeral. Alec met me in the courthouse lobby with a yellow legal pad and a look that said, "We've got this." We walked in together. Marissa was already seated. She didn't look like herself, hair pulled tight, makeup caked on, a pantsuit that looked borrowed. I wondered briefly if she'd slept at her parents' place. Or Dorian's. Or maybe in that used Toyota she'd fought so hard to keep in the divorce filings. When the footage played, her breaking in, trashing the kitchen, urinating on my clothes, there was a moment in the courtroom that felt like a vacuum. Total silence. Even the court reporter paused. The judge, a heavy-set man named Kaplan with eyes like dull knives, looked at her like she was made of rot. He turned to Alec. "I'm making the restraining order permanent," he said. "I'm also authorizing restitution." He flipped through the invoice we'd submitted. "Ms. Hale, you have 10 days to pay for damages, cleaning, and all associated costs. If you fail to do so, you will serve time for contempt." She didn't speak, didn't even blink. The gavel came down like a gunshot. She walked out before I did. 3 days later, the check came. Made out from her account, not Dorian's. That was a surprise. Jules and I didn't celebrate. Not in the pop-a-bottle kind of way. But we did go back to that same booth at O'Malley's and eat like the war was over. And then, we slowed down. We weren't dating, not yet. Not officially. I was still legally married for a few more months. But we had coffee in the mornings, long walks on Saturdays, and kisses that felt like maybe, just maybe, I hadn't been totally hollowed out by Marissa after all. By the 4th week, we were working like a team again. She didn't tiptoe around the divorce. She didn't ask about what had happened in our marriage unless I brought it up. She just showed up. On time. Fully present. Sharp as ever. There's a strange clarity that comes with betrayal. Not just about your spouse. About yourself. You see where you bent too far. Where you ignored the signs. Where you convinced yourself staying quiet was the mature thing to do. Jules helped me see that I'd stopped being a man in my own home long before Marissa said the word divorce. and I wasn't about to let that happen again. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. No courtroom showdown. No last-minute surprises. Just signatures on paper and the final stamp of indifference from the clerk at the counter. It was a no-fault split. Property divided 50-50 on paper. In practice, I kept the house and everything in it. I refinanced. Bought her out with money she didn't know I'd set aside over 2 years. That money had been saved for our 10th anniversary, a 2-week trip through the Italian coast. I never told her about it. Never even hinted. Just moved it from one account to another after the affair started. She never got a dime. Same with the 2 certificates of deposit I'd cashed in, bonuses from my last 2 projects. She couldn't touch those either. She didn't know they existed. As for alimony, the court awarded her $100 a week. For 2 years. She'd tried for $500. Alex said we got lucky. 2 judges, he explained. Kaplan and Rosenfeld. Cousins. Both had wives cheat on them. I looked at him. You serious? He just smiled. Sometimes the world throws you a bone. Marissa and Dorian didn't last. I never got the details, but 7 months after the final decree, she was living with her parents. 8 months in, she applied for a job at the front desk of a car dealership I used to do business with. The owner called me and said, "You want a say in this?" I said no. Let her live her life. I was done with it. One afternoon, I sat at the Hilton bar downtown, waiting for a site meeting with one of our HVAC vendors. I ordered a steak sandwich and a beer. While I waited, a man took the stool next to mine. I didn't recognize him at first. "Mind if I buy you a drink?" he asked. I turned. It was Dorian. He looked worse than I remembered. Thinner, darker under the eyes, like someone who had spent the past few months inside a spinning blender and just now stumbled out. "Go ahead," I said. He waved to the bartender, ordered 2 bottles, and then sat in silence. Just stared at the glass. "I didn't know," he said after a while. "When I met her, she wasn't wearing a ring." I didn't say anything. She told me she lived with her disabled mom, that she couldn't go out often, said her ex was abusive, controlling, that she was scared of him. He kept talking, like someone confessing more to himself than to me. "I was going to propose," he said. "Buy a house. Make a life." I looked at him. "So what changed?" "Some guy at the plant recognized her. Said she was married. That she'd cheated on her husband with his brother. That you knew the whole time." Didn't believe him? I wanted to. "But then I got your letter. The one with the lottery ticket." He paused. "She broke down when I confronted her. Told me you were violent. Threatened to kill her if she left. That you'd hurt anyone she was with. But she couldn't keep the lie straight." I dug. Found the truth. "So you kicked her out?" He laughed, more of a sigh. "I let her stay, but only if she kept sleeping with me." "Classy." "Stupid," he said. "But she was good in bed. And I didn't care anymore. And now, she's gone. Left while I was at work. No note. Just gone." I nodded. Drank my beer. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "What's this?" "The ticket," he said. "You remember?" I unfolded the slip of paper. "My old Powerball. The one I'd tucked in as a joke. This one hit?" I asked. He nodded. "Partial. Not the jackpot, but enough. I cashed it and set this aside for you." Inside was a cashier's check. A very substantial one. "I waited to give it to you," he said, "so you wouldn't have to report it in the divorce." He stood, patted the counter once. "See you around." And then he was gone. Jules moved into the house a few weeks ago. It wasn't some grand romantic gesture, just a quiet decision that made sense. We didn't need to say much. We'd both been waiting for things to clear. Now, we talk about marriage, about kids. And for the first time in a long time, I believe in those conversations. Not as a way to fix something or to hold on to someone, but because I want it. I come home to peace. I wake up without suspicion. That's happiness, in my book.